There you go. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it just a minute to let everybody join in here, and then we'll get started with our program. All right, it is 12:01. We're going to go ahead and get started. People will join us as we go. My name is Sean Hadley. I am the Midwest District Secretary for PRSA for Midwest District, and I am currently I work as a consultant. Previously, I've worked in the public and the private sector, government. Also, was a TV producer in my former past life as well. So, this discussion should be a good one for everyone here joining. So, I'm going to go ahead and start with my panelists. I'm going to introduce them in the order that I see them. So, I've got former professor of University of Central Missouri, Dr. Tricia Hansen-Horn. I'll let her introduce herself.
Yes, good afternoon. It's good to be here. And I have been teaching in the higher ed realm since 1989. So it's been a long time, and I just retired last month. But I've still continued my educational career and just got done with an amazing curriculum development at the Pacific Coast Banking School in compliance. And so very practical kinds of applications, which is what I'm known for, is bridging the divide between, many of you would say, higher ed and the real world. And that's definitely a passion that I've had for many years.
Okay, and our next panelist is Greg Newenbell. He also serves as a president-elect for the St. Louis PRSA chapter, and he works for Black Twig. So Greg will introduce himself.
Thanks, Sean. Hey, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I just want to say thanks to Sean for prompting this discussion. And when he and I were texting, he said he wanted to put on a seminar about short form content. I thought, all right, that's my jam. And I'm very glad to participate alongside these two esteemed panelists. And so my name is Greg Newenbell. I grew up and currently live in St. Louis, Missouri. Also a mule. I know, Sean, you went to Central Missouri, and Dr. Hansen-Horn. So graduated from Central Missouri State University when it was still called that. I studied economics and journalism there. I'll just say it's the most underrated J school in the state of Missouri. So I spent 5 years after that in a newsroom as a sports reporter and editor for the Suburban Journal's newspaper. Parlayed that into a 10-year stint doing marketing and communications for SSM Health. During that time, I earned my MBA in marketing from Lindenwood University, so also a proud Lion. And I think this is really where my passion for communications began to blossom. I had, some experience spent in the field that I was able to leverage in the classroom, which added considerable value and relevance to my education. So I would just say any communicators out there who don't have their MBA, go do it. I would do it again in a heartbeat if I could. I had a lot of fun. So that led me to my current position as a senior account executive at Black Twig Marketing and Communications. We're headquartered in Clayton, Missouri, and we are what you might call a boutique marketing agency specializing in B2B and B2C marketing for small and mid-sized businesses. We were founded in 2006 with the intent to help companies grow their business by utilizing their own unique story to generate buzz within their marketplace. And our mission is to build brand temptation. And we specialize in core services that surround content development, which we'll get into today. So that would include strategic planning, media relations, social media, email marketing, web development, all of which is related to short form content. So I've been here for just over 2 years now. It allowed me to kind of downsize the scope of my responsibility from a corporate environment and think more like an entrepreneur. And we serve clients in a number of industries, such as construction, technology, nonprofits, just to name a few. And it has challenged me to think like a CEO. So if this was my business, how would I run it from a marketing perspective so that every dollar you spend on marketing is going to yield a higher return? And so we work with clients to understand their unique business situations and goals and develop customized marketing solutions that are designed to do three important things: build awareness, raise consideration, and drive sales. And so that last point, drive sales, when I was in healthcare communications in a big corporate environment, that aspect was somewhat lost on me. It kind of took care of itself there. And I was so far removed from anything involving sales. So what does driving sales look like for your business or any endeavor for that matter? And when I was in healthcare, it was convincing people to trust the expertise of our doctors and our medical professionals to deliver a level of patient care and service that they can't get from anywhere else. So smaller businesses, of course, think about sales a lot differently in terms of, I need these sales to keep the lights on. So we enjoy great relationships with clients here at Black Twig that have been with us for a long time. Talk more about my experiences here, just to round out kind of my background. I was very inspired to get involved more in volunteerism a few years ago, just to better leverage my knowledge and my skills and my experience. And I serve on 3 boards. As Sean mentioned, I'm the incoming chairperson for PRSA Mid-America chapter, which I'm really excited about in terms of advancing the profession. We have a conference coming up next month, Leadership Assembly and an Icon conference, which I'm really excited to attend. And hopefully some of you will be there with me. And the other boards I'm on, Vision St. Charles County Leadership and Volunteers in Medicine, which is a free local healthcare clinic for underserved families and individuals. So I'm very proud to serve on all these boards. I see it as an opportunity to help these organizations the best way that I know how. And that starts with effective communication. So I think that's a great place to start. And I hope to continue making an impact by showing the world why communications in business is more important now than ever. So I'll pause, send it back to you, Sean.
Thanks, Greg. That was a very, very long intro. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Rick Hensel. Rick Hensel is he's one of the founders of Spot Media Content, and he is going to bring a lot of his expertise knowledge in this conversation with all the clients, the vast majority of clients that he worked with. So Rick, go ahead and take it away.
Real quick, I did not go to Central Missouri State. I know a lot of people that went there. I might have been to one of the bars down there before, but we won't talk about those stories. Real quick, Sean, I've known Sean for over 10 years, almost going on 15. We worked together when we were in our news days. I was at Fox 2 for 17 years in the news business. I was a news photographer, and I started my company, Spot Content Studio. Thanks for getting the name right, Sean. We make content, and really that was formed out of 3 different. We were Spot Media Production Group before that, and before that we were Spot Creative Agency, but that name was taken in New York. So we were finally landed at Content Studio, hence why I've been invited to be on this board and talk about content and storytelling. So very eager to chime in at any point.
All right, a few housekeeping notes, questions. So this is going to be a discussion amongst the panel. We want you all to participate with questions, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll monitor those and we'll actually answer them as we go along with this discussion. But again, it's one of those we want everybody to kind of participate in what we're talking about here. So if you have something that you want to a question, or if you hear something that's brought up, you want to expand on it more, please go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll acknowledge that and keep moving forward. The goal here is to have this discussion go until at least 12:50, give or take, and then we can take live Q&A as well if that's something that's desired. So again, as we go, put your questions in the chat, and we will answer them as we go along. So to get this discussion going, so we're talking about evolution of content, and where this idea came from was something that actually I was talking with Rick, and then I've also talked with Greg about this a couple of times, but Rick and I kind of were brainstorming and talking about how clients or organizations are having a need to take long form content and reduce it down into short form content, make it more appetizing and more appealing and whatnot. Because over time, and Rick will get into this too when we go through here, that a lot of organizations, would like to have those stories told through, long semi, like, 3 to 4 minute, 3 to 5 minute pieces. And now it's kind of with social media out here with, like, TikTok and Instagram, it's one of those where we're having more sizable bites and, things down to, like, 30 seconds to a minute at most, or, and not hitting that, making, finding that sweet spot. But all this content's been developed over time, and so reutilizing that is what we're going to have a discussion about here, is how you can repurpose that content that you've already either spent money on or spent a lot of time on, and so you can still kind of use that and make it relevant here. So my first jump off here is going to be, how do you see the evolution of content? What have you seen in your industry, the trends from when you started in it to where we are now? And I'm gonna go ahead and let Greg take us off on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Appreciate setting that up. So in preparation for my discussion today, I thought about, why would people want to spend their time to watch our discussion today? And hopefully it's to become better communicators, continue in education. Maybe you're here simply to support one of our panelists. Whatever the case, just thank you for sharing your time, being part of PRSA, and advancing the profession. And for me, it comes back to an age-old question that is still so relevant. From the standpoint of my attendant audience, I find myself always asking, what is in it for me on their behalf? What's in it for me? Communication one-on-one. How do we encode a message so that a recipient can decode it? And is the value of an endeavor worth it from the standpoint of their effort, financials, and especially time? And maybe this is the economist in me talking, but everything in life has opportunity costs. And you could very well be spending your time doing other things right now that'll bring value to your life, your workday. And everyone makes countless decisions throughout the day with that in mind, getting the most from our time, money, and energy so that we can enjoy life and not have to work harder than we have to. And this was relatable to me even when I was a journalist, when I was in a newsroom on deadline, pounding out copy, probably doing a gamer. I would ask myself, why should my reader be interested in what I'm writing? What do they want to know? And it's just those principal questions of who, what, where, when, why, how. And I think, we've gotten away from the basics in some regards. So in journalism, that takes the form of an inverted pyramid. It always goes back to that, sequencing the information in a way that's so easy to understand. And, these critical information points, the 5 W's and the H, need to coalesce within your message in order to get your point across. And if that message is encoded properly, it should be easy for the audience to decode it and understand and move on. So adding value to every interaction is something that I focus on, keeping it short and sweet, no matter what the medium is, whatever that content, however it manifests itself. So short and sweet, or as I like to say, keep it concise and on message. So I would open with that and throw it back to you, Sean.
Yeah, and good points there with the 5 W's. Not forgetting that, because that's still the principle for creating this and the platform for how we communicate. Dr. Hansen-Horn, I wanted to bring in your background, because you just recently retired from University of Central Missouri, and you've molded a lot of minds, and some of us on this call you've actually had some influence on. But can you talk about what you're seeing now, or what you've seen within the last couple of years of the evolving content and where we are?
Sure. I approach this from probably a very different perspective. And I was thinking about this. I led the only 42 programs in the United States are certified by PRSA, and our program is one of them. And so we have one of the best curriculums, and it is unrecognized, as you say, one of the small ones, Greg, that people should pay attention to. So I spent a lot of time working with students in communication, content, marketing, matching students and employers, and all those different kinds of things. And when I was thinking about short form, the first thing when Sean asked me, I said, well, but I also see the evolution of, or the growth of, long form media emerging through independent, what would you call them, podcasters or media. So we can't forget that, because that's very, very powerful. And trying to get students to pay attention to that One is, okay, you have to go where your public is, and sometimes they resist that. A couple things just off the top of my head that I thought you all might be interested in, because you're always looking for good talent, and I'm looking at students coming out as good talent. Expect to upskill. Know that students' literacy rates are very low. And I think what did I just find from the National Education Report was 2/3 of our 8th graders don't read at proficiency level, and it does not get better in college. So expect that if you're looking at digital literacy, which is what we're talking about to a large degree, and we're talking about short content, to digital content, and competence in digital strategy is somewhere in there. You might have to give them a reading comprehension. We actually threw one out at the University of Central Missouri as a gen ed assessment because students, a bunch of them couldn't pass it. And so we can fault universities, but it starts when they're very young. And it's not just COVID, because it's been the literacy rate, which is a key to everything you're talking about, the key to understanding your employer, right? To understanding your publics, to looking at a bunch of data that comes in and analyzing it and figuring out some kind of strategy takes reading comprehension. And if students don't have it, they're not going to be a very good employer. On the flip side, employee. On the flip side, for all of you trying to market to them, they don't read. And they can't read very well. A lot of them can't. And so go after the ones who can. So freshmen today have some challenges that they didn't have before. They do like short and quick. They tend to get, and I've only been retired for a month from the university. I asked them, where do you get your news? And they're like, what? YouTube. So they're in a bubble like never before. Been teaching since 1989. And it's so easy to be in this bubble. So finding ways to mine their knowledge and understanding if you're trying to reach them, but also how do you, in a way, upskill them so they're good employees when you get them is a challenge that all of you are going to face with many of them.
No, it's very good perspective, something that actually I didn't even think about, and which is one of the reasons why we brought you into this discussion, is because you have touched those people that are coming into this industry already, more recently than Rick or Greg or myself have. I'm going to go ahead and kick over to Rick here. So Rick, I want you to go and keep talking about, keep the discussion going, but then also did receive a question about how AI is being utilized too with as far as developing content, which I knew we were going to get that question. So it's one of those where it's a good timely one to take. I know, especially with like Adobe adding in the AI tools now and things to be able, kind of, I mean, like I said, it's making us lazy, but it's kind of doing some things to us that we probably weren't expecting. So Rick, go ahead and keep us going and touch on that as we go.
Well, the AI, we could go on for hours probably, because I'm learning every day. I'm pretty illiterate when it comes to AI, but I mean, we talk about it daily. We have our Monday morning meeting. We talked about it for half an hour this morning about things. I mean, we're all learning this together as it goes along. And I think any agency that says, or any company that says they're AI pros are lying, because it changes every day. Just like when social media came out, all the rules changed every day. As soon as you thought you were an expert at Facebook, then they changed, and Twitter back to when it was Twitter, they changed their rules. So it was like constantly keeping up with everything. And that's kind of where AI is today. And with kids coming out of school, they're different from when we came out of school. From we walked uphill to school both ways in the snow, just like our parents did. It changes, everything's changing. And that's kind of where you and I had this conversation about changing with content, because telling stories is the baseline of everything today. Greg brought up the 5 W's and the H. I mean, that's great. I mean, if you can hit those pillars in 30 seconds, in 7 seconds, or a minute and a half, or the long format now. Yes, long format has gone away, but now we talk about long format now being a minute 30. Long format used to be an hour, but long format, she's right. Long format's coming back in the form of a YouTube video being produced by Yeti. Yeti does these great, it's called Yeti Presents, and Yeti Presents does these great videos. They take the viewer fishing off the Gulf of Mexico and blah, blah, blah. And there might be 10 shots in there of a Yeti cooler, but they're telling a story. And within that story, in that content, They're selling their item, their services, something. They're inbreeding it into the story. Now, whether, like I went back to, whether it's 7 seconds teaser on Instagram or it's an hour-long show on YouTube, it's content, and they're telling the stories of when, where, how, why, when, where, all everything above. And it's all about telling stories, and that's where content, everybody's like, oh, so here's 30-second TV commercial. Everybody wants to jam in 45 seconds of information in a 30-second thing. In 45 seconds information in 30 seconds, you get lost. You don't remember a phone number, a name, or anything. But back at, 10, 12, 15 years ago, you would try to remember something, and you would try to remember a phone number or go to the yellow books. Well, what do people do now? I'm at home, I see something, I don't remember anything, but I remember the name, and I Google it on my phone, and I look at it, and I go to Instagram now. Maybe I don't even go to their website anymore. I go to Instagram of Yeti, and boom, here comes 25 pieces of content from Yeti, and that is going to convince me the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, the bottom of the funnel, if I'm going to buy this piece of this item, or if I'm going to sign up for this service, because it's usually something that catches my, my interest of somewhere along the line. And so here's what's a funny story is somebody today needed the video that we've done on a DVD. We're running around with our heads cut off because we haven't burned anything on a DVD in like 10 years. But that just seems like yesterday to me. But that's how much things have changed, and it changes so fast. And you got to keep up with the changes of how not only how content is made, of using cameras, microphones, still photography, graphic artists, whatever it is, to the delivery of it. No more DVDs. What are you delivering it on? Where are you delivering it? Where's your audience? Who's your audience? There's not only is there so much creative strategy that goes into something, you need digital strategy of how are you going to get your message in front of the right eyeballs. The right eyeballs are you educating somebody? Are you educating for a nonprofit? Are you trying to raise money for the nonprofit? Are you selling an item and service? Whatever it is, you have to have strategy from top to bottom. So, I can leave it right there, but I could go on forever about AI. So.
No, Rick, good point. And, again, one of the things, we're going to keep expanding on, and AI is going to be this conversation. Dr. Hansen-Horn brought up a good point, too, about the podcasting and those new trends that are starting to pop off, especially what we saw with COVID, with Clubhouse, those kind of social micro podcasts, as you would call them, where basically everybody can just grab a phone and be a podcaster at a point. My point here, my question here is, okay, and Greg and Rick might be able to touch on this pretty well with the clients that you serve and everything like that. What are you seeing more requests for kind of coming down the pipeline with regards to how organizations want content or view content or want to utilize content or that need for it? So if one of you guys can go ahead and take it, I'll let Greg go ahead and chime first. You can.
It certainly depends on the client. Where is their marketing maturity? What's their understanding of marketing? Because it means different things to different people. And, obviously they're coming to us because this is what we do. So, in terms of, what's coming down the pipe, I would just say social media is the one constant. It's everybody needs to be paying attention to the information they're putting on their social channels. They have to be on the right social channels. You need to meet your audience where they are, of course. So yeah, that's a big part of it. I wanted to share something that I saw in the last year or two. It was a segment on 60 Minutes about this gentleman named Andrew Mellon, and he is referred to as the most organized man in America. And he offers advice on setting yourself free from clutter. So the segment focused on physical clutter in our households, but I just thought about it in terms of intangible clutter that we deal with in our lives. Content saturation. Many of us have evolved into and adapted a scroller's mentality when we're on the computer, on our phones, scrolling vertically through our news feeds on X, Facebook, or flipping through TikTok videos. And how do we make sense of everything that's being communicated to us? So I saw this segment about how this guy organizes his life, and something just clicked because I noticed a common thread that was directly relatable to our work in communications. And I saw another recent presentation that I won't fully try to rehash here, but it really inspired me to consider the psychology behind communications and how the brain works. And the presentation centered around the human brain and how it's essentially the laziest organ in the entire body, genetically programmed to simplify everything and also categorize everything. So if you picture a filing cabinet and you open the drawer and you see the folders, your eye is going to be automatically drawn to the tabs because they're categories. And this is how our brains operate, just like a filing cabinet. So, I say that because, the biggest key here to be effective in your communications is to understand your audience. And the more intimately you can understand your audience, the more effective you're going to be at relating to them and being able to hone your message in a way that offers value. So simplification has just been on my mind, in my communications work and in my life in general. And I just think that's a great takeaway, is how can we simplify our communications so that it can be more easily consumed. And when people come across our content on a social media channel, it will be so visually and verbally compelling that it will stop the scroll and give that person some value to look into your product or service a little bit deeper.
Real quick, just jump on that. Stop the scroll. I wrote it down. That's what we you have to grab that first second and a half on social media content is everything. If you can't get them to stop the scroll to watch something, then you didn't do your job. So that's a lot of times, whether it's a minute and a half long, they're not going to get to the 45 seconds, or they're not going to get to 10 seconds if they only give you a second and a half before they're like, this is boring. So we emphasize it, whether if it's TikTok, it's your first second. If it's YouTube, it's the thumbnail with a description over the top of it. It's like a headline of a newspaper. What old is news, news old. A newspaper, it's all about the headline. It's from top to bottom, from right to left. It's how Greg was saying, it's how the humans interact. Everything's from left to right, from top to bottom. How does people read a newspaper? How do they read a book? It's just how it just naturally, we don't program ourselves. It's just how we react. And so there's been a lot of studies done. It's lower thirds, upper thirds, equator. It's how you give. Right now everything's 9:16. For a long time it was 4:8, and it was 9:16. You had all these great places to put graphics, but now because the phones don't go like this, nobody wants to hold their phone this way. They want to hold it that way. And now you have to shoot everything this way and get it like when you do a TikTok video, you got to make sure if you put your own graphics in, you got about this much room, because down here is where all TikTok puts their information. So there's a lot of thought process in trying to stop the scroll, because you're right. You're overwhelmed with content, and people got to organize their mess. They got an hour at night. They're going to mess around on the phone. How are you going to capture it in that 1 hour? Hopefully your digital team has done a good job of finding that person, getting in front of that person, and then it's the content's job is just because we got the video in front of the right person, the right eyeballs, what's going to stop them to make them watch it? You got to stop that scroll. So everybody's like, oh, I'll go digital. It's all so easy. You just put it out there and away it goes. No, it's not, but it's the best way today on return on your investment. All our clients want to get a great return on their investment. And unlike with broadcast, where we used to just throw things against the wall and see if it sticks and say, hey, mention you saw us on TV, you get $9 off and tell them Rick sent you. That's how they used to judge if they were getting a good return on investment. Today, you can do analytics with data, and everybody knows this now. It's the way to go. It's the way to do things. And it's just, there's so much more. You can just peel the onion back all day long.
Rick, I would add on to that. You said some really interesting things about, again, going back to the psychology of communications and how the brain works and how the eye is drawn on screen. And one thing that I realized recently from some research is, I think we were analyzing some web pages, but the brain, when they see images on screen, the go first to people and human eyes. And so that's the number one thing that people are drawn to on page. I'm sure you incorporate, the people and the faces and the personalities in your work, Rick. But how do you see that as trying to prompt those cues and lead the viewer on a journey like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the story, and you try to encourage. The first thing we do is you try to get your message down. It's all about the message, and then you fill in your imagery, and then you try to. Every story has you'll go back to journalism, a beginning, a middle, and an end. You hope to get to the middle and end. It's all about the beginning. What is your best asset for your beginning, and how's it going to? Does it touch emotional? Is it visual? Is it audio? You got to try to grab somebody's attention by some sort of behavior. And people's behaviors are different. So we do have set ones that are all the same, but maybe if you're doing wildlife is different compared to if it's investments or if it's healthcare or is it food. Every group is different within the common what we all are, but it depends on what interest category or pillar you're going after. Hope that answers some questions.
I want to jump into is something when I work with students, as I listen to you all, it's really important to know who your audience is and where they're at. We have an aging demographic, and many of them are cell phone users, smartphone users, but many of them aren't. And I have some parents who are not. And so making sure you adapt your content to where they are, as well as getting them to action in ways that they can do. So students assume everything's social media, which is where the money's at and the ROI, unless you're after an older population, that's just not part of their world. So I think that's key to remember as well. And research your audience often, right? Because they change very, very quickly. Pay attention to the trends. And the last thing I was thinking, and my students have been shocked by this over the years, and this leads into the next question, which Rick and Greg and Sean probably too, you're much more expert on this than I am, in terms of which ones are worth developing. I think that has changed because there's so much clutter on some of the social channels that people just don't want to be there anymore. We have to be careful of how much we clutter up LinkedIn, perhaps, but know which social channels your people are on. Where are they at? And so I always bring up, and I'll murder the term, but is it Statista? How do you say that? .com. Anyway, the top social channels in the world, the first one is still Facebook. People are like, what? Still Facebook. Then it's YouTube, which is where a lot of people get their news. Then we drop to Instagram, then WhatsApp, then TikTok, WeChat, Messenger, and then Telegram. My students don't even know what Telegram is, but it's highly used around the world. And so knowing what's out there in terms of who are you trying to reach, and then what are you allowed to do on it is pretty key too.
So Dr. Hansen-Horn actually addressed the question that was actually in the chat that was put there. And the question was asked of what platforms are relevant. And I know you just flew through those again. Go ahead and give them the top 3 or 5, I guess, again. And then we'll push forward. So it's Facebook. This is internationally, right? Facebook, yes. YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok.
So there you go. Go ahead, Greg. I was just going to say, it really depends on your business and your audience. Where's your audience primarily? For us at Black Twig and the businesses that we work with, LinkedIn is a staple. Some of our clients utilize Facebook and Instagram. Those are the 2 primary ones that we specialize in with our clients. Certainly YouTube is very important from a video perspective and an archival perspective. But really, it depends on what you're selling. Are you selling specialty software? Or are you selling cheeseburgers? So, if you're selling cheeseburgers, maybe TikTok is the right avenue. But if you're selling specialty software where the sales cycle is super long, I'll get more into that later, LinkedIn might be the best platform because it's where your niche audience spends a lot of their time, and it's the environment that you can best engage with them within. That is on topic and helps them kind of move the needle with their business and selling their products or services. Yeah, and I'll actually piggyback. I'll jump in here with you on this. So LinkedIn, so the organizations I've worked with, I've seen from the private sector get to the public sector.
LinkedIn was a kind of an afterthought when it came to the public sector, but then the private sector, that's like kind of where the meat was, and that's where everything was being pushed out, was on pushing that content out on LinkedIn. In the public sector side of it, when in my days with public affairs for a major utility here in St. Louis, we utilized YouTube quite a bit. And one of the reasons we utilized YouTube quite a bit was because that's where we were kind of housing our kind of building our content library. And Rick can jump in here because Rick actually, Rick and Lynn, Rick's little brother Lynn, actually helped us develop a brand strategy for one of the utilities I worked for here locally in St. Louis. And one of the things we saw was the way we started to develop that content and then where we were going to put that content at. Well, we basically started, that's where our YouTube channel became just blew up. Now there's the smaller content's been going towards the IG side of things and kind of pushing that way. Not so much TikTok because the government sites usually don't allow you to use TikTok. So if you're a government employee or that's that sense of it, so that's kind of where you kind of see that kind of going. But definitely LinkedIn for the private sector, I'd agree with Greg on that. It was a big point of content to use or place to use.
Here's something we don't want to forget either is when we were listing them in order is Google's the #1 search engine. YouTube's #2 and TikTok just came in at #3. So that's one thing people got to remember is not only is it content and servicing or trying to sell a service or a product, content is being used in the algorithms of search. And it's falling into those 3 categories of people may search how to make a burrito on TikTok and up it comes. And the problem we're hearing now lately, and this is in the last 3 months, is you go to Google and you search how to make a burrito. It used to pull up all the chefs or restaurants of how to make a burrito. And guess what? It's not bringing up those websites anymore. What's it bringing up? AI. Google's AI is telling you how to make a burrito. And so it's scraping all your information off your website or your videos and whatnot, and it's formulating in an AI paragraph or 2 at the top of Google. And now all of a sudden the game has changed again of where your content is. How do you get in front? It's no longer, it's going to go drive me to my website. It's Google stealing all your information and putting it up there, and I get my information there, and I'm making my burrito, and I never once visited Sean's Burrito Factory's website. So, I mean, that's just one thing, it's like you're constantly learning on how's content being used. It's not just sit back and watch a video anymore. I mean, it's being used for everything. Now you're selling services, but it's being for information and stuff like that. So it's like, it's a deep dive and a lot of stuff. That's why I said with the AI, it's a deep hole. You can really go down pretty far, pretty fast, and it's constantly changing.
I wanted to mention, Rick, as you talked, and Greg as well, and probably most of you on the panel, I think it's important then that you keep a section of your businesses or your offices always available to educate your clients and your bosses, because they don't understand the difficulty. And I've seen this over the years. I can remember sitting, and because I've been around a long time, and it was some people from Lockheed Martin, and I can't remember what else. They were talking about the web. Well, we have a web page. We're at a conference. We just have it to have it. We don't do anything with it, right? That wasn't that long ago, actually. It was probably about 22 years ago. And so now it's so much more complicated. If you put anything out, the magic bullet theory, right? Stick it out on TV. There were 3 channels when I was growing up and a couple of radio stations, and the newspaper was awesome. And then when I look at what we have today, always making sure you're educating and you're able to educate your clients so they don't have unrealistic expectations, because it's a tough gig. And I've had college professors who I disagree with. They're like, well, I read a newspaper, so I could be a journalist. Well, I watch broadcast TV, so I could do that. And I'm like, I have a husband who's in broadcasting. Sean knows him. Used to be a photog, has done producing, done a lot of stuff like that as a PR guru now. But it's like, it is a lot of work. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of strategy, which, by the way, most people don't know what strategy is my perception, even in the professional world. So being able to educate them on that, strategy is one of my passions. And we tried to make sure our students have some sense of strategy before they graduate. But so we're all educators, or our clients will get frustrated.
we can educate too, and we're learning every day. It's constant learning, and and that's why I was just saying how things go in cycles and stuff, and it's changing really fast right now. And there's a lot of people out there learning and trying to stay on their toes to try to figure out how content is played within our world today. I mean, Sean, you and I, what brought that up was the thing we did together. You put it on YouTube, and some BBC or whatever saw it in England because they saw it on your YouTube page, and they wanted to come over and do a documentary on what you were doing at that company you're working for. I don't know if you're going to name it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. Rick's brought up a good point too. Like the content that we pushed out, that's been pushed out there, that content is being seen by all over the place, and no telling what it brings in. And the particular story that Rick's talking about here is that we were pushing out a bunch of stuff on sewers, and kind of pushing out just what we were doing with our massive projects and everything. And what happened there was that some broadcast company over in England wanted to come over and do a BBC style of Dirty Jobs documentary on what the type of work that we were doing. So granted, it was money driven too, but also it was one of those things where it's that they people were out there scrolling and finding those ideas, or trying to piggyback off of maybe that little sliver of content you put out there to making it to taking it to the next level and everything. So I mean, Rick, there's a client he has that sells clothing, and the things that he does, the things that they do for that client, I mean, I've seen firsthand. They've got a big celebrity spokesperson athlete that's a endorser for them, and they had at one point, this athlete was 2 years ago, I believe it was injured, and the first video of him surfacing, actually doing actual physical activity, was done by Spot for this particular.
You can say it. He was Dak Prescott. We had 55 minutes Dak Prescott at his house, and the 55 minutes that we were with him, they have milked this video for years. And guess what? Dak just signed a $200 bazillion contract last week. Guess what video they put up on their social media? The Dak Prescott video that we've shot for 50 of my minutes, which has been re-edited and re-edited and re-edited and re-edited to amazing things. And their return, what's the ROI on that? And it's a blue jean company out of Mississippi. They make blue jeans, and I kept saying, what's your ROI? How are you guys doing on that Dak Prescott video? And they're like, it has already paid for itself 150 times over. It got them into a gifting program that they sold 450 pairs of jeans, $450,000 worth of jeans in one day. So they were stressing out about it a lot because it was a lot of money for us to fly down to Dallas and do all this stuff and spend 55 minutes for them, but it paid off. And then they just kept repurposing and repurposing and repurposing, and it keeps paying for itself over. But it was thought out, and they had a digital plan on the back end. We had a creative plan on the front end, and it really paid off for them. Sorry.
So no, it's a good segue, or a good point you just made there. So we did have another question coming in. So I'll just read this point blank. It says we're trying to assess the value of investing in paid social / web ads. Any thoughts on that / as podcasting or webcasts, and where do you get the most bang for your buck? So Rick, you kind of just touched on it a little bit, but I guess we can keep elaborating on that question. It's basically, where do you
Well, Dr. Hansen said something about podcasts, and that as being a long format. And I mean, everybody's getting into the podcast world. Everybody's doing a podcast. My mom's doing a podcast. The great thing about a podcast, though, is who cares if they ever listen to the whole hour-long podcast? You can cut that thing up into 50, 60 pieces of 7-second, 30-second, minute-long pieces for, guess what? Your social content. and it promotes and it promotes and it promotes, and it's constantly staying in front of people and staying in front of the eyeballs. And so that for a long form, as far as podcasts, as far as ad buys, maybe Greg can step in there on that. But what we do with that is we partner with people about the digital strategy. Do you want to push this video? Do you not want to push it? Is this a filler piece of content, or is this a paid piece of content? Is this an ad, or is it not an ad? Because anymore, you can't tell by your naked eye. Is this an ad? Oh, this is an ad. They're trying to sell something for $4.95. No, this is an ad, and it's just a sexy video with some sexy music, with a blah, 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 and they just paid $400,000 to push it out to 3/4 of the country. So that's my little take on that. I won't take up too much time.
I'll jump in. I prepared a couple of remarks that may touch on answering that question, but it's a good question. ROI, how do we prove that in marketing? It's very tougher in some situations than others, but I wouldn't, maybe your job has to do just with paid social web ads, but you look at it more holistically on an account that I would serve. I look at their marketing mix between owned, earned, and paid content. And you want to strike a right balance. You want to have kind of some irons in the fire in each of those three categories. And I think that's really when it taps into your marketing strategy. So just make sure that when you're looking for ways to articulate that ROI, lean on your analytics, measure your views, measure your engagement of your social content, how much traffic your latest blog is getting. Are you on social media putting link backs to your sites that are driving people there? Repurposing content every way that you can. It's tough, and you constantly have to convince people of your marketing value and show that. I wanted to mention a couple things, and I hate to admit this, but I have never really been a very avid reader, and that may have to do with those bad memories of grade school book reports, and my mind just goes adrift when I'm, going through hundreds of pages of text, and I realized that maybe that sort of long form content just wasn't for me. My brain doesn't think that way or have the required attention span. So in a world of content saturation that we live with, coupled with shortened attention spans, it just makes for a really difficult job for communicators. So I think effective communicators can find that right formula, that ideal marketing mix for your particular business, a balance between owned, earned, and paid content, and leveraging that business strategy that effectively crafts and consistently delivers these messages to your intended audience, no matter at what point they're at in the sales cycle. So that being said, I'm not adverse to long form content, namely books. So I just wanted to share some recommended readings with you all. The first one is Pitch Anything. It's an innovative method of presenting, persuading, and winning the deal by Orrin Clough. And then the other one I've been dabbling into is Impossible to Ignore, creating memorable content to influence decisions by Carmen Simon. And so when your message is easy to remember, become impossible to ignore. So I mentioned earlier about driving sales, and not everyone is going to be ready to buy whatever it is that you're selling today. But if the need is there, everyone has to buy sometime. So how do you nurture that process to raise their awareness and build their consideration for your product? And so the purpose of our marketing work here at Black Twig is to shorten that sales cycle. And we do that by communicating the value of our client's product or service, so that when the decision time comes, your brand is going to be top of mind with your consumers when they have to make a decision. So, because you've put out communication that helps stimulate that sales cycle, ultimately you shorten it. And a couple of quotes that really always stand with me when I do my work is less is more. Is it more? I would say in most cases it is, because as I mentioned, the brain is programmed to do just that. But also another thing we've heard in communication is that perception equals reality. So how do we shape and influence their perception? And the more intimately you know your audience and where they are and how to talk to them, the more effective you're going to be at persuading them. And, I mentioned the specialty software products, and that can be a hard sell, different than selling a cheeseburger, And so I have that one client that specializes in this programming for university law schools across the country, very narrow, very niche audience, limited to just a handful of stakeholders across the country. So what we do is we tell stories around the pain points of our audience. We have to drill down in these the messages, to have to tap into what keeps them up at night in terms of their job. What makes it difficult to the point where it's detrimental to their job or the university or its students. And so there's a clear sales component of wanting them to commit to purchasing and implementing the software at their institution, but it's such a small audience and such a long sales cycle, you're not going to close the deal every single day. So how do you paint that picture, encompass all of those pain points for your audience, and position your product as a valuable solution? So I'm going to talk. Well, I'll send it back to you, Sean.
Oh no, it's fine. You're bringing up some good points, because one of the other things I'll add to that, excuse me, is you were talking about perceptions, reality, internal beliefs, external, and keep that in mind that when you're developing your content, your internal audience, your employees, your staff, whatever, that still excuse me, that still bleeds out externally and can help you as far as guiding your messages when you're putting stuff together. One thing I'll say is that when we developed our digital strategy at MSD, was that one thing that we did was we started out with employee communications internally, develop doing content, and what it led to was we were telling stories about our employees, and then those stories ended up coming out into the public eye, and the public eye ended up seeing that type of content, and that content also helped show what we did, what the day to life of a sewer worker or utility worker, also showed the aspects of the job again. So somebody, I had a kid that's in college right now, college age kid, could show them that video and say, hey, here's college may not be for you, this might be for you. But it's also a recruiting type of thing, is what I'm getting at. So that's my point there, is that it's the internal stuff bled out to externally, which also bleeds into recruiting and bringing people in to that you would never maybe have touched on before, because they can actually see it. Going back to what Dr. Hansen-Horn said in the very beginning of this whole conversation, which I'm going to bring this full circle, is that kids aren't reading. So visually is where we are here. And that's kind of one of those things where, you could tell them about, hey, you're going to go down these cool, awesome tunnels and clean and do this and that. But they think about sewers as all nasty, gucky, and everything like that. But when they actually saw it and see that there's like pretty cool things they're doing, it's like, okay, it changes the game on it. So
tell the story.
Yeah, you tell the story, and that's where it comes down to. And I mean, that's what we've, this kind of panel is leading to, that we're not, again, I want to kind of put this out here. We're not the end all be all experts to this, because again, everybody's learning, everybody's doing what they can to strive to succeed and put the best thing out there for your organization, for your clients, whoever it may be, is teaching students or whatever, whatnot. It's one of those things where this discussion here, again, was spurned toward just, basically me and Rick hanging out and having lunch and kind of brainstorming some ideas on just where we see communications evolving. Because again, like Rick kind of alluded to at the very beginning here, we've both come out of we both came from the TV side of things, and worked our way up through where we are now, and have seen things over time. I mean, going from beta tapes to DVDs to MP3s, whatever. I mean, the files, anything like that. I mean, we've seen it all kind of just evolve through through time, and that's one of the things that the discussion's not going to stop. I mean, clearly AI was something that we knew was going to pop in this discussion, but AI is just in the last couple of months been something that's very relevant. Like I guess may have heard me mention earlier, Adobe Creative Cloud's added an AI tool into the platform now. I mean, you can basically put video in there and tell it to edit, and tell it, and kind of tell it what you want it to do, and it's going to go ahead and put it together for you, which is kind of taken away from those people that have been creative before and have put that time and money into it. Now it's like, you kind of, if you know how to use it right, you can kind of be dangerous with it. So just keep that in mind. We're coming towards the end here, so I want to go ahead and open up for any questions that we may have. I believe you might be able to unmute yourself if you want to, or I mean, I know you guys have been doing a good job of putting stuff in the Q&A. If not, I'm going to go ahead and let us wrap, and I'll let each of us kind of give a closing, here, and we'll keep it to like, a minute, Greg. so, I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Hansen-Horn kind of wrap up and give some closing thoughts here.
Well, thank you for letting me be part of this. It's very strange not to be very involved right now, and so this was a lot of fun. And actually, I just had a comment. I'm not an expert on podcasts. I'm a pretty big consumer of them, and I have watched one of my former students launch a wealth management firm and take it from zero to about $360 million in 7 years. Had an education in PR, and one of the things they used was podcasts. And so someone had asked, are podcasts worth it? Take a lot of time, tremendous amount of commitment. Startup costs can be pretty expensive in-house or outside house. But if you put them together, it's always about your audience, and especially in some of the more complex areas like wealth management, right? And so make sure that they're key always the questions that your consumers would be interested in. Make it easy for them to access. It's a living history, and it's like a living library for them. And they can come back to it if you drive them through your other social media. Ways that make it extremely digestible is divide all of your podcasts into chapters with good labels and placeholders so people can find their way around. Make sure you put the time down. So if it's a 3-minute read, a 15-minute read, or whatever, I think that really helps, or listen. And then provide some good writing for a transcript for those people who also like to read. So Greg and Rick, you may have different thoughts, but I've seen that work successfully in a number of areas for some agencies. And then it's always there so that people, when they have that need, they can come to it and they can get some pretty good information. If it's just to sell a product, probably need to go in an influencer, get it on TikTok, if it's cheeseburgers. But thanks for letting me be with you today.
No, that's awesome. And thanks for being here with us. I appreciate you coming out and making an appearance again for us. So, Greg, I'll let you go ahead and take it next.
I'll give it to Rick, and then I have a couple of other things to say, and I don't want to be excessive with the time. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
No, good stuff on the podcast stuff. There is no right or wrong in any of this. Just doing something. If you're not doing any type of content, just doing content is a kickstart, and you'll be amazed how much you learn just by doing something. Second thing is, I'm proud of St. Louis. I'm proud of the Midwest. I think people in this area are doing great stuff. We're a very creative bunch. Don't let people shove you around saying you're from St. Louis. We do great stuff in this market. All my competitors, everybody, all my agencies, all my partners, all my clients, we do really sexy, good-looking, creative stuff. And I'm really proud to be from St. Louis. So I just want to tell people that.
Just finally, guys, just a couple other takeaways I thought I'd leave you with in terms of like what the short form content types are for an agency like Black Twig. So blog under 1,000 words, I would consider short form. Case study, something that conveys your expertise, thought leadership, show that you're an authorized voice in the industry. Social media, of course, email marketing, and then media and PR. I don't think we touched on much today, but not just the output of the news clip, but especially, the media pitch is a short form communication, trying to convince a journalist to pick up your story and tell it the way that you intended. So that's essential for your pitches to be short form. Otherwise, it's so easy for reporters to overlook. But really, I just take it back to being a journalist trained on AP style. I think it's a great reference in my career in terms of condensing content, doing so consistently, even down to the time and date details for the event. We talked about the 5 W's and an H. But how do you convey and present it in a way that's easy for the intended audience to decode, understand, and remember to raise their consideration to register for the event or whatever you're trying to sell them on? And so when I was under deadline writing stories, I would read and reread down to the word to ensure clarity and really just take the reader on a journey. Because I wanted the article to be worth their time spent reading it without making their brain work excessively to decode the messages. So the last thing I would say about an agency setting, it's so important, the driving sales component for our clients and using that short form content to support their sales team so that they can effectively tell the brand story and get that potential customer across the finish line. It's about the value proposition. And in most cases, you're not going to trace a sale or a conversion back to a single social media post, but perhaps your customer saw or engaged with that post, found some value out of it, and it prompted them to move closer to the finish line. So all of these things can be used as sales tools, blogs, case studies, other collaterals for the sales team to use to do the legwork and selling ability to make it more convincing and effective. So I will round it out there and give it back to you, Sean.
No, thanks so much. And we are at time. So, Greg, you can actually do a podcast and probably all this and keep going. So there'll be an after show. You'll find it on YouTube. Greg can share his link to where he'll be still talking about this stuff. Now, I'm messing with you. Greg, it was great having you as well. I mean, you brought some good insight. Rick as well. Again, Dr. Hansen-Horn, appreciate all of you being on here. Again, this is just an informal discussion about the content. We're all members of PRSA, so you can find us out there. We're all on LinkedIn as well. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any more questions or want to discuss any further and kind of go into more depth. So again, thank you for your time. Continue to be on the lookout for more PRSA Midwest District webinars or programs coming out here in the next coming months. So again, thanks for your time. I'm Sean Hadley. Greg, Rick, and Dr. Hansen-Horn, Dr. Tricia Hansen-Horn, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you guys.